The year is 2021, and I can't get quality internet. Why? The answer to this and other questions this week in Outcast Haven Podcast. It's so annoying. So sorry, everybody. That's my big vent. So if you have hateful comments about me dissing my internet, just write them in the comments and I will go at you.
It's funny because like 90% of all of your issues I have just edited out. So people are like, I mean, I've heard Jason like say his internet was bad once. Now he's just really pissed for no reason. But it's like a weekly struggle.
Yeah, till the leaves fall. So anyway, I wanted to start with this skirmish season is a little weird to me, and I'll explain why it's weird. The first thing is skirmish season number 1 was very consistent across the board, right? Every store in America did an online event. Other places in the world that could have in person did have in person. This year, it's just kind of a show, for lack of better terms. You don't know if it's going to be a Blitz event. Is it going to be a sealed event? Because I thought they were all supposed to be sealed, but they're turning up as Blitz event somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really hard to gauge what's actually happening because they're kind of all over the place. And I think the excitement, because last skirmish season, it was you see it everywhere. You had Rob streaming stuff. We were streaming stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That excitement's kind of died because I think the inconsistency has done a little bit of that. Maybe technology, people not being able to be mobile and bring their equipment to the actual skirmish site has a little bit to do with that. But that just feels weird to me. Not sure what you guys think on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that like people are just playing in person now in most places.
Right.
Like most countries in the world now, and I mean the whole United States is effectively open. Most of the United States is back to pretty much full capacity. Like a lot of the stores don't even have caps. You don't have to pre-sign up or anything. You just show up. So I think people are just they're not bringing stuff to stream. I think a lot of people, stores have notoriously inconsistent internet at stores because they're in random storefronts. They're all over God's green earth. You never know what you're going to run into. So unless you really know the store owner too, there's not even a guarantee they're going to let you stream. So that's one of the things. And then I think a lot of people don't want to bring their stuff to set up. So the only ones that you're really seeing things for is the ones that are happening online. And there's not a ton of webcam ones, it doesn't seem like. Seems like most of this stuff is happening in stores now. And I don't blame anybody. I like playing in person better too. Webcams was one of those things that when it was the only option, it was amazing. And it's just like, please, I love webcam so much. It's amazing. And now whenever there's like webcam stuff, like Dragon Ball is still hosting some webcam regionals. Like, nah, I'd rather just go play at locals. Like I'd rather just play cards in person because that's what I want to do. I want to play cards in person. So I don't want to play in skirmishes on webcam anymore. I want to play in skirmishes in stores. I want to go play at locals. I want to play at armories and stuff.
Yep, no, I'm with you on that. I think, and I agree that that's probably what is causing that. Like play in person. That's the exciting thing and fun thing to do is get that local community going. Like it was great, and I'm glad that we had the skirmishes online and all of the hype built around them and all of like the community interaction with them. And I hope that some of that still exists. I hope that some of it comes back. And I do think a little piece of it might be the inconsistency of like not really knowing the advertising for your skirmish not being as prevalent. Because like I'm sure local shops are just filling up in person for their skirmish stuff. So it's like, well, why would they post about it when they like already filled all their slots? So people don't know about them. People aren't really looking for. Yeah, people aren't looking for stuff because they've got it locally. So I think that's just naturally what's gonna happen, but it'd be cool to see like some continued online, like maybe content creator driven or just shop driven online stuff. Like I really love playing, like getting to play Lee in that, because this week I played Lee from Australia, one of our buddies that's in that group chat with us. played him for the Cancer Society drive, and that was super fun. Like Harry, another one of the guys from Australia, just like hopped in and like watched us play, and it was fun. I like still doing that online stuff and like playing with those people you'd never get a chance to play with. So I hope that continues. But as far as the skirmish season, doesn't feel the same, and I doubt that it will ever feel the way that first one went.
Nope.
That's okay.
Yeah, I agree. I will say to Blake's point, I got to sneak Tuesday night unexpectedly for locals and play an 11-person armory event. And so I just threw together a little bit of Rob's Prism deck, which Rob, sweet deck, not my style of play. So I'm going to redo it. I'm going to Jasonize it, which means go aggro. I ended up going 3-1 with it. So it's not a bad deck. Played, I lost to the person who won with Ira, who went 4-0. He beat me. We played beforehand. His name is Dylan. Super cool guy. We played before, couldn't beat it. Played it again, couldn't beat it. I just need to go full aggro like I like to do with the Prism, and that's probably how I will run it. I understand why he ran it. It's his build is gonna be better into a larger field than what mine is, but I'm just gonna make mine to kill Iris. So that's 100% what I'm gonna do.
Yeah,
just because spoiler alert, we're going to do tier lists here shortly, and Ira's probably still going to be on top of most people's Blitz lists until it starts getting its face smashed in. But yeah, so playing in person, just showing up on a Tuesday, random Tuesday, had the time, decided what the hell, I'm going to go down there, had fun playing in person, freed up Saturday. I'm going to go do a skirmish event down at Atlantis, but it's a sealed event. I'm not going to stream. I'm not going to bring streaming stuff because I just don't feel like watching a streamed sealed event helps people as much as like a Blitz tournament where you're seeing a constructed deck. I may be completely off, but I feel watching a sealed doesn't help me because of the pulls and that sort of thing, where if you watch it constructed, you can see how somebody made a deck and how they are performing with a highly built deck.
I loved watching the LSS team build from a sealed pool. That was super fun to me. I like that type of thing, but I get what you're saying, especially like as someone who is self-admitted not super into sealed, or like really like, you know, that's not your forte. Yeah. So I mean, it is what it is. Go have fun, play some sealed, practice. Yeah. Go, you know,
I'm gonna put my best Blake and Dane face on and see what happens.
Yeah, just go play your little heart out, and you're gonna learn and grow, and then Team Sealed's gonna come around and you're gonna be like, all those extra sealed I did, it's paying off, baby.
I might try to block in this event and see how that pays off for me.
I mean, it depends on what you're playing. I oftentimes have found that it really depends on what you're playing, and especially in this sealed, it depends on what you're playing, if you block or not. Because personally, I think if you're playing chain, you don't block unless you absolutely have to, and you just try to run them down. Unless they want to run themselves down, then you block a little bit, because
then you block
just,
a little bit.
Yeah, then you just don't die. You let them kill themselves with their deck.
It is interesting to see a lot of the different metas that have changed, like since we started with this with Monarch coming out. I run Blitz still seems to be prevalent, but like we didn't have a lot of chain players at this little event. I don't know if they were many at yours, Blake, but I'm doing the Blake for the next couple armories that I can make it to, and I call it the Blake because it's what he did, and that's just switch decks every time. So even though I have a highly tuned Kano deck that I love with Nourishing Emptiness, I just set that on the shelf. I went Prism. The next one, I just got the last bolting blade. I'm 100% going bolting, and then I want to make a good chain, or try to make a good chain deck and see what happens. And I probably will not punish myself with Lavia. Probably not.
Yeah, that deck's tricky. I mean, I think if you're gonna play Brute in Blitz, you're better off just playing Rhinar, because
I think honestly, with
the Intimidate
too.
Yeah,
I think CC is probably just Rhinar. I'm not having a ton of fun with Levia in either. I know I kind of grabbed that deck when no one else showed interest, but dude, I don't like Brute. Talk about a deck that's not your play style, Jason. Like Brute is so not mine.
Yeah, I think the issue.
Huge thing.
Yeah. I think the issue with her is the fact that she does a lot of the brute things, but Reinar just does them better because he intimidates. Like that's really what it comes down to, is the fact that when you're playing with her, you're getting slightly better curved attacks. Some of her attacks are cheaper, like 1 and 2 costs, where in Reinar they're costing 2 and 3, and maybe even giving you 1 or 2 less damage. So they're curving them differently. You might spend 1 less and get 1 more damage. The difference is they're putting you in a position where like blood debt can come back to haunt you, and they're not giving you any real value, because with Reinar, the ability to just discard 6s and things like that gives you value. Doing what the deck wants to do gives you value, and it benefits you as a player. And I think that's why Reinar is good. It's the same reason in a lot of ways that any deck is good in this game, is because if the deck has something that it does well, and that effect, or that the thing that creates benefits the deck's primary win con, then the deck is in like significantly more powerful. Because like with Chain, you're trying to go wide, so the fact that you can make Soul Shackles and get go again just naturally makes the deck do what it wants to do, which is go wide with a bunch of small attacks. Her thing where she's like clearing out her graveyard doesn't do anything except give you a little bit different curve. That's literally all it does. It doesn't actually really benefit you in terms of like hurting your opponent.
Right. And I think that the thing that I realized with her that makes her a brute is that, like, because I built it to consistently hit blood debt, like to hit her blood debt trigger so that she doesn't take damage. Like, it does that very consistently, and I will very seldom take blood debt, if ever. I actually can't remember the last time I took blood debt. But the trade-off for that is that she doesn't have a ton of teeth. Like, she's going to hit you with a 6 maybe twice a turn, a 7, like just making sure that she hits that. But if you go into like the 7 and 8 hits and you have to block with a card, those are red, so you're running a higher red count, which means that you risk more block. Like, so basically brute is where the risk reward, it was always the case with Reinar, but it's where the risk reward is most visible, where that, like, just the RNG aspect of the deck is what makes the deck good, but also can make it bad. It's like the swingiest of, and I don't like having to play a secondary game in my head with what are my odds of this, right? Like, what am I, like, with Reinar was rolling dice. With Levia, I think that it's late game when you are forced to block, getting stuck with a red hand and then not being able to attack if you block, which means that you can't trigger your blood debt, which means that you're taking that blood debt. So it's like you want to run her hot with more teeth, but you have to find that balance, and she toes that line just like Reinar towed that line with like just really pushing himself along and being so close to toppling, of making the deck consistent but consistently not super strong, or making the deck inconsistent, very strong, but then risking constantly whiffing. And it's just like finding that balance, and I hate that as a concept. So I think Levi does that too. I think that's what makes her very brute-like.
Yeah.
So this is going to lead to a good segue, because what we're going to do is we're going to tier out Blitz and Constructed. But I want to
we're doing that. We're doing that tonight? Wow.
We're
okay,
doing
cool.
that tonight on the fly. But here's the best part.
All right.
This is an Outcast Haven tier list, so we have to agree on our 1, 2, 3, 4. It's got to be unanimous. We have to come to a consensus of 1 through 4. Okay. But before that, I want to do something fun for our next live stream that me and Chris did last night with Ashes that I think would be amazing. And that is play deck roulette. We roll 2 dice. We go on to FabDB deck, and then we count down that many decks, and we play that deck on live stream. We'll give the credit to whoever made it, and just throw a random deck on
cool.
On live stream on Tuesday.
Yeah, I'm in.
So you guys want to start with Constructed or Blitz?
Blitz.
I kind of want to just get Blitz out of the way.
All right. I got Ira number 1. I don't know if
I won't argue with that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well.
It's just too consistent right now. Even if something gets better, it's just too consistent. Number 2 could be all over the place, just because I've been looking at results. I I want to say number 2 right now is probably Chain because of what I've seen in results, but I would like to hear your guys' input on that.
I mean, I want to say Kano. I don't see anything that's knocked Kano out of it, and he's just like he is. Is there anything that consistently beats Kano? Does Chain consistently beat Kano?
I've actually never run that matchup.
The only thing I can imagine is that Prism probably crushes Kano, but I don't know how prevalent Prism is in
I think
in Blitz.
Prism runs into the I think Prism, like, people will play it because they like Prism. I think the issue with Prism is she sits in that world where she kind of has hard losses because Ira runs enough 6 attacks and is consistent enough to potentially like push her in a weird spot, and then anybody who plays Bravo or Rhinar makes it really hard for her. And then Kano is just like, Kano's weird because she kind of just takes Kano, but then Chain, I think in every format, has a decent Prism matchup. It's like a really tight matchup, but you can, it's just all pilot dependent in that point.
Yeah.
So she gets put in a weird spot. Yeah.
My number 2, my number 2 has to be, it's probably Kano or Rhinar.
Blake, what are you at?
Yeah.
I mean, I can be swayed to Kano pretty easily. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I definitely, I mean, I teeter between Kano and Chain. If we're going purely on results, then I mean, that's the obvious choice is Chain or Kano after Ira, because I think they're the most 2 consistent decks. So that's the thing, is I think that becomes a coin flip.
What was the
We'll go Kano. We'll go Kano.
What was the event that
Kano.
Did I make that up, or did Rhinar's been doing pretty good in Blitz, hasn't he?
He's here hit and miss. I mean, he won the TCG Skirmish event. Kyle went 3-2, I believe, in Swiss, and then just wrecked everybody in the top 8. So, but that's what Rhinar does, and to the same extent, Kano does, and that's why Ira's tier 1. So, the reason Ira's tier 1 is because Kano sometimes bricks. Rhinar sometimes bricks. Ira doesn't brick. It's always going to do Ira things, and that's why it's number 1 on our tier list, because of the consistency.
Yeah. The consistency of that deck makes it the best deck in the Blitz format, because Kano and Rhinar in some ways, and even Chain at times, are doing things that rely on random game state situations. Kano needs to see a certain combo. Rhinar wants to see something like Tear Limb from Limb, Blood Rush Bellow if it's going the Claws route. And if you don't see those things, it's kind of weird. Kano just needs, or Chain needs to see certain things flipped off the top. If you build the deck with anything that's not Blood Debt, you get put in those weird spots where if you hit the wrong game state at the wrong time, you know, anybody who's played Chain has had a moment where you've had to block your whole hand, and then you flipped 4 Blood Debt, and then you're like, oh God, take 4 damage, pass the turn, and then you're put in a weird spot next turn where the same situation can happen, and it can have that RNG nature of it, can be a little problematic. But that's the Kano issue too. So I think Kano number 2, only because Kano has a very definitive win con that it pretty consistently hits, whereas Chain relies a lot more on the pilot and the build to be really consistently good.
Yeah, I'd go Kano. But now, Dane, you think Rhinar's 3? That's
well,
where you're at,
just going off of, so I gotta find the results, but I thought I saw Rhinar like pretty consistently in the top 4. And from what I heard, I don't want to put him there because I effing hate that that hero. But I just heard he was doing really well, and from the talking with other people, it sounded like Rhinar was in his position pretty well. So could totally be wrong, but
I think Chain purely on results has to be considered the 3rd best, because results wise Chain, but then that becomes the eternal question of trading card games and CCGs, TCGs, whatever you want to call it. Is it really the 3rd best deck? Is it really one of the best decks in the format, or is it simply the most represented deck in the format, and therefore because it's the most represented, has the best opportunity to constantly get highly represented?
That's why I didn't put him at number 2, even though I know he's got better results.
A couple. So here's a couple skirmish results. Top 4 was Kano Kano Ira Chain. Then it went Kano Kano Ira Prism. They had another one on here, Ira Chain Chain Bravo Kasai Kano Kano Chain. So a lot of the same ones you're seeing there. So you are seeing Ira, Viserai, Dorinthia, Kasai, Lavia. So there's one that, because that's not draft. So that one's all over the place. So there's, but you're seeing the top consistently, and maybe
Where were those at? Just out of curiosity, where are those skirmishes at? States, New Zealand?
Let's see. We got Singapore. This one doesn't show me who it is because it's draft or sealed. One USA, one Canada. So there's a little bit of mix. The Singapore was Ira Chain Bravo. So there's mixed results. Australia was Ira Viserai Dorinthia Kasai. I didn't go through obviously all of these, but there's there's a ton coming up as well. So we'll start to see a little bit more of what people are playing and how they're represented. So they also did like a hero breakdown of a bunch of these skirmishes, because there was a bento game one that had 69 players, and the breakdown was 1 Benji, 4 Boltons, 3 Bravos, 10 Chain, 11 Dorinthia, 20 Ira, and 12 Kano. So that showed you, and that had 4 Kanos out of the 12 in the top 8. And only 2 Iras out of 20.
So I mean, that's kind of gotta. Do we have flip flop 1 and 2, right? Kano.
I don't know if you take one result.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even like looking at the other results that you listed, though, like it was very. I heard a lot more Kano something something or something Kano something, and I think in that whole listing.
Australia. So my thinking is simply
Ira
this:
won Singapore.
I hate
Ira's won 2 of 3.
Yeah, I'm tired of Ira. No, I think the thing with Ira is that the deck has the consistency to it always gets in the top. And it's one of those decks that, like, once it gets to the top, no matter how many there are, it's going to finish first or second. Almost all the time, if or when the Ira gets in, one of the Iras always gets to the top. You don't typically see a list where it's like, oh, in the top 8 there were 2 Iras, they finished 7th and 8th. It's like no. Out of the top 8, there were 2 Iras, 2 Kanos, 2 this, and it's like, but it was Ira 1, Kano 2, Ira 3, something else. And it's like Iras always tend to rise up because, again, the consistency shines the longer the tournament goes. And if they made top 8, they're probably a good pilot. And if you have a consistent deck paired with a good pilot, you typically have good results. Like that's typically when you have the best results.
Yeah, Nourishing Emptiness did a lot for Kano. After just played a half a dozen, and I was very, very anti-attack action card, but that card's just broken in Kano. It's so damn good because you're always, in my opinion, I try to get an arsenal, pitch to Kano to throw Arcane at the person first to strip 1 or 2 cards from their hand, and then you throw the Dominate 6. So now it's like, are they going to get rid of another card to block just 3 of it and still give me a 5-card hand? It just puts a really weird spot for the person, and I love it.
Yeah. So we got Ira, Kano, Chain. We feel comfortable with that.
I do.
Does Reinar just slide in at 4, or do we have?
I mean, looking at the results, I would say that's a big no.
Yeah. No, just listening to those, I don't know who I was talking to, but they're full of shit, just trying to freak me out on Reinar.
Yeah, I would say that this is gonna be, because it's a lot of the same decks. So. I mean, this is where we throw in our wild cards. You know, Bravo's a wild card. Dorinthia, I can't believe she's not on top of more. But I will say the Prism matchup into Dorinthia is pretty solid. I mean, you can. I pulled off a double erudition with Prism. Oh my God, is that an insane turn? I mean, it's just so much damage. The person just looks at you like, well, you took all my cards on the last attack and the attack before that. So I mean, now I'm up to 4 attacks. It's like, what do you do as the other player?
Yeah.
You just take 25 damage.
What's
It's a-
that?
it's
What's
a
that
tough
warrior
matchup
doing
for
with their
sure.
armor? What they do? They block out the war
Yeah.
tune. Rookie mistake.
go?
They block.
Rookie.
Save it for the air edition. That's fun.
One
thing I
card and
learned.
courage blocks 5.
You do that. Those I pitched
Better have the
the
pummel.
first air edition early because I'm like, there's no point in throwing it at a warrior early game because they block it. So you just try to chip away that armor. You know, they're blocking here or there to save their hands. As soon as you say you got no armor block left, Arsenal Herald of Erudition, and then the huge turn ensues.
Into Prism, the only thing I'm blocking with on my armor is the courage, but I just want it for like the turn that I Twinning Blade and a double go again. That's why I want to block with my courage early, because I want that. That's the only one I'm blocking with. Everything else is getting saved for eruditions. If I don't see an erudition, I ain't putting that shit out. That's staying right in the armor spot. It is not moving. No way. Not a chance.
I mean, my wild card, I'm going to put my wild card is going to be Prism, just because for me, never playing that deck and going 3-1 for the first time. And we have good players in the area. It's not like, you know what I mean? It just, you're not playing bad people. You're playing decent players. I think it's a viable deck in the meta.
So here's the question. All right. So now I got a solution. You said we have to have unanimous. I think what we do is the outcast tier list is top 3 has to be agreed. The 4th is the wild card, and everybody gets their own wild card.
You know what? It's our podcast. We'll change the rules right now.
We'll do whatever we want. We didn't talk about this beforehand. This isn't one of those like tried and true practice.
Jason's like, we should do it. Yeah, Jason was like, we should do a tier list, and I was thinking like, okay, cool. I'll put some graphics together and get that ready. And then like 5 minutes later, we're in the middle of the podcast. Like, okay, time for the tier list. I was like, oh, I was like, right now. Okay, cool.
That's how we roll.
I've thought about it.
We roll.
Okay.
I'm putting Dorinthia because I play Dorinthia, and I think a well-piloted Dorinthia gets through the field.
Jason.
Yeah, I'm staying with Prism. I'm staying Prism for my 4th wild card. I think Bravo not being very well representative is her auto loss. I think she can do all right against Reinhard. And because Reinhard, if he does block with a 6 to turn it off, that's amazing. Because
just
you want him
that
to
baby.
He can't discard then. So that's fine. I like Prism.
Yeah. I think I gotta go with Azalea because Memorial Ground. Card came out, broke it. Azalea's broken now. No, I think that. Oh man,
tough
it's
decision.
Benji. It's obviously Benji.
No, it's
Benji was good. I played Benji with Prism round 1, and I almost lost.
I'm excited
because
I'm excited to play.
He had me.
More
He
Benji.
had me, and he decided not to block on the turn that I had pummel set up. I was like, "Ouch! I hope you have a defense reaction." He's like, "No, son of a bitch." He's like, "You have pummel, don't you?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." God damn it! I knew it.
Because he probably could have gotten away with just blocking from 2 and throwing a free 2 attack at you and winning.
Yeah, I mean, he knew it. He's like, yeah, I knew that you would have run yellow pummel. That was really dumb of me. He got, it's a typical greedy hand. You got the really good, I'm just going to destroy you in the next hand. And hope they don't have pummel. And I just had pummel that
See,
turn.
I think one of my favorite things about Benji is like, there are like really good like destroy you hands. But for the most part, it's like if I can throw two non-blockables or like a Kodachi into a Command and Conquer, it's like I need 2 cards in my hand. I'm fine. There's no need for greed at all. In late game, it's like I don't need to like set up a 3-wide turn to get through your hand or armor or anything like that. It's like I just throw a yellow head jab. You can't block it. You didn't arsenal anything.
And if you
You're spending your whole hand on me.
An arsenal, yeah, but if you get the Command and Conquer in your arsenal, then you just literally need 1 blue card to do your 1 and 7.
Yep.
Which is insane.
Well, no, it's
That's
not 1 and
amazing.
7 with Benji, but yeah.
It's just a 6.
1 and
yeah,
6.
you gotta hit the attack action. Yeah.
But that's one of my favorite things is like because typically late game you're like you got to plan for like getting through hand or like trying to pull cards from hand first or somehow tricking them into giving you their last 1 or 2 life. And with Benji, it's just like yellow head jab. Good game. Always Arsenal. I always save a card
I've
for
been on
Arsenal
that
just to make Benji sweat. No, I think I do have to go Prism just because I've got to believe that is just the fact that Prism warps other decks just in its existence. I think makes it worthy of a top 4 spot.
Yeah, and none of these are wrong. And I think all these decks we mentioned, most of them already have won one, but we'll see all of those win a larger Blitz event at some point. Prism will win an event. I know she will. There's just not Bravo is her arch enemy, and I just don't think there's enough Bravo Blitzes. We don't have any Kales in the States, at least, to pilot one to destroy her.
Viscera has been doing surprisingly good too, hasn't he? Like he's got a couple top 4 showings.
I think Viscera is with the Sonata Arcanics and how they're running that makes him with the Bloodsheath Skeleton. I mean, yeah, I would like to see you revisit that, Dane, just to throw something together and see what you can make with that.
I did save all my pure Runeblade cards. I sold all my chain stuff because I don't have an interest in playing that, but I've got all my other Runeblade stuff. Yeah,
and that's a Runeblade, so you'd be set there.
Yep.
And then with the back analysis.
I'd much rather play that than a bio.
Yeah.
I think
I was just going to say, I think that the Blitz meta is interesting because after Ira, it does feel like it's like the top 3 Ira Kano chain is hard to argue with, but then after that, it's just so wide open as far as what. And I feel like Blitz is a format where you have a lot of people playing just their favorite deck. So they're just playing, if they're not playing Ira, because if you're coming to an event and your intention is to simply win the event, you're probably playing one of those 3 decks. Those are the decks that you probably perceive as your best opportunity to win. So if you're just chasing the prizing, you're probably playing one of those 3. If you're not simply there to chase prizing, then you're probably playing your favorite deck, which means it could literally be anything. Like any deck could be represented in the rest of the field, which is why it makes that 4th side. Yeah. Oh God, Data Doll. It's like PTSD. Just like had a flashback there for a minute.
Does Nourishing Emptiness says that you get a +1 to your intellect, right?
Right, yeah.
Oh,
if you don't have any attack, if it hits and you don't have any attack action cards in your...
Well, if you don't have any attack action cards, then the hit becomes that effect with the dominate.
Then the hits becomes dominate with that effect, yeah. But you have to have no attack action cards, which is tough for them to do.
A whopping 4-hand. Oh,
yeah.
What about
in hand?
So what about just a crazy like pistol Data Doll that's just items? Just items and defense reactions and 2 nourishing.
Yeah.
And you just go defend, cycle with like and then just build your pistol and Nourishing Emptiness.
But you have to be banishing stuff to get her ability.
You got to be able to boost stuff to get her ability. That's the problem. You have to boost in order to
dash.
Don't even do it. Don't even boost.
Yeah.
Nope. Just
what I'm curious is why have we not seen like Kav Dane, like a creative Kav Dane, which I will probably do that now that I just brought it up to myself. I will make Kav Dane. But
dude, that OTK Kav Dane
idea.
was effing silly. I still like when I realized, I will not forget that feeling in my chest when I realized what that deck was about to do to me. I was just like, oh no, I need to kill you before you do this. I saw him like pitch like his second Slogism, and then he pitched like I don't know, something else, and I was just like, oh no, this is what he's gonna do. F. He's got like he like pitched a Slogism to
Ralphie.
Like, and then played his second energy potion, and I was just like,
yeah. Yeah.
Don't.
You go full Ralphie. I'm in danger.
That's exactly what I did.
I'm in danger.
Nobody's messed with Shiana yet either.
I don't think that. I don't know.
I don't think that the specializations were that insane, right?
Not good enough for her.
You want to run Arclight Sentinel in her? Is that what you're Is that what you're
Can she
looking
run?
for?
Can she run like V?
Be the Vanguard.
Via the Vanguard is, I mean, it's Bolton specialization, right?
Yeah.
So
She could run Soul Reaping, banish one, be a 6, give her a resource.
Dude, just run Doomsday, Soul Reaping, all that stuff.
Yeah, you could
Just-
banish the Eclipse card. You can never get it off, but just banish. Be like, it's there. Oh.
yeah. The funny part is like V would be so bad because you only get the buff when you charge light cards. And she can't run light cards, so you would have to have the other V in hand to charge to even get a +1 on your attacks. You'd have to charge the other V of the Vanguard.
All right, well, that was
in
a
your
trash
deck.
idea. I'll stick
So-
with the Cavdane and a lot of new cards of Cavdane. Just forget I ever said anything about Shannon.
What about what's the other one? Not
Lumina Ascension.
yeah,
Like Lumina is
you
his
could swing
other.
with
Yeah,
I mean, that would
could
be a
swing with
great
the Talishar twice.
Talish. Yeah, I mean, well, honestly, if you swing with it for the third time, putting that third rust counter on it, or Lumina before the third swing, so you get 4 swings with it, because it doesn't break till the end of turn. You can just
Right.
put
You just
four-
have to have
4
enough
tokens
go
on it.
again.
Dude, F it, you're fine. Figure it out.
So here's the hard one: is a tier list for constructed. And I say it's hard is because with the whole card merchant, I've played a ton of different decks. Like,
Yeah.
there's like no repeats. Everybody's playing different decks. All the decks seem pretty good and can
I mean, I
do
think-
what you want with the
I think we
sideboard.
know I think we can all agree on number 1. I mean, I think Chain is number 1.
Yeah, I mean, what Chain does is inherently powerful in the game because in some ways he feels like he breaks the mechanics of the game. I think that's the one of the base mechanics of the game is having a very limited hand size and having your hand just trapped at 4. And then because I mean, we literally talked about Nourishing Emptiness seconds ago, and think about the fact that when you can draw a 5th card, you're just like, oh my God, this hand is insane. I'm gonna like lose my mind because I have 5 cards. And then
Mhm.
Chain goes, yeah, I'm not gonna block anything this turn. I'm just gonna block with Husk and stop the big attack that you have coming at me. I'm gonna play with the 4 cards in my hand, the 1 card in my arsenal, and the 4 cards that I banish. So I will now be playing with a 9 card hand in a game where people get a boner over 5 cards.
I
Yep.
mean, is there something wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying the comparison is horrifying when you think about it. Like he theoretically, he doesn't actually break the mechanics of the game because there's a significant price to pay for those cards. And sometimes you can absolutely get like RNG'd out of the game because nothing feels worse with Chain than somehow missing seeds 2 turns in a row and just staring at like Bounding Demigons or Unhallowed Rites and being like, oh my God, I can't play these cards. They're literally trapped in my banish zone. They are killing me right now because they just sit there and stare at you and go,
Is that Bounding Demagon or is that
Bounding says you can't play it unless you play a non-attack action card.
Oh, okay. What's the other one that does that too?
Unhallowed.
Unhallowed does that? Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Number 2. So I'll agree with Chain. I think as people discover, it'll get knocked down as we get more CC events. Number 2, I'm gonna throw just because he's undefeated with it so far in the card merchant and just kicking people's ass is Bravo.
Azalea.
Yes.
Our subscribers just go down by 2 because
Yeah.
the Azalea players
What
quit
is that?
watching.
Well, I mean, like Dane said, in Memorial Grounds.
Yeah.
Memorial
We're
Grounds.
sorry, Azalea players. I love Azalea. Like in my heart of hearts, I love Azalea. I just can't bring myself to play her because she sucks. So
But my number 2, in my opinion, is Bravo because he plays so well into the field. So I actually just text Kale to see how his was doing. And the only thing that he really struggles into with that deck is Dash, but Dash is non-existent anymore.
yeah.
Mhm.
So, which makes
Yeah.
Bravo very good. Now, there's arguments for Ton. Dorinthia is good, but I think Bravo, if you have the same level of pilots, Bravo beats Dorinthia because you know how to block or not block and how to sequence those.
All right, let's think about this. So, people listening to this right now, let's pretend like we're creating this tier list for, and it's what I've been doing, but let's create the tier list for people if they don't know what to play. What should they pick up? These are the tiers of like where these decks are at. Not this is the deck because one amazing player has been grinding this deck for a year and a half, 2 years. Because like I don't know if I would recommend. Would you recommend to like a new player like Bravo is going to be like your best shot at winning?
Bravo's pretty consistent. He's going to do the same thing. You're not going to have to worry about RNG at all with Bravo.
If you have time to practice Bravo, I think Bravo is one of the most consistent and the strongest into the field decks. I think the issue with Bravo and the reason that Bravo might be lower than 2 for me personally is because I do think Bravo is a classic scenario that every card game in the history of ever has, where it has almost no 90-10 matchups where it's like it has a win. Like it sits down across from a deck and just goes, I beat you. And it has an entire field of 60-40, 50-50, or 40-60s. Like it never has a bad matchup, but it never has a great matchup. So you have to pilot the hell out of the deck in order for the deck to be successful. But I think that it's like wildly consistent, and what it does is inherently powerful because it doesn't have to really change the style of play that it wants to play from deck to deck. What it just needs to adjust little strategies inside of it. It needs to time the right crush effects at the right time of the game. That's pretty much all he needs to do. And then it comes down to just being able to play it. I do think that it's an inherently hard deck to play because it does have that issue that it just doesn't have matchups where it feels overwhelmingly powerful. It feels like it's just really good and do a lot of things.
So what's your number 2, Blake?
My number 2, oh God. I don't know. I
would guess. I could guess yours. I would Dorinthia. I mean, that would have been my guess.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have a hard time not saying Dorinthia, but again, I think that becomes one of those issues where the question becomes, is it actually one of the best decks, or is it just one of the best decks when piloted correctly? Because like I never feel like I have issues playing Dorinthia and being competitive in every game. I never sit down and feel like I have auto losses because I feel like I can play the deck well and I know the deck well enough. But again, to Dane's point, if I'm just recommending it to somebody, I think Dorinthia is a deck that you can absolutely hose yourself on and misplay if you don't know how to pilot the deck correctly.
I mean, if you look at
maybe I misspoke. Like I think I'm talking less about less to like the new player looking to pick up a deck. What's the best deck? I think more I'm trying to get to the like top players in the field, like
best in the field decks.
Well, just not. I mean, who else is running Bravo? Is there a ton of Bravos? Like just looking at the pie chart. Like, is there?
No, I mean, there's not much.
Yeah, there's
data
not.
for constructed. I mean,
so what I'm saying is there's one amazing player who's been just grinding the shit out of Bravo. If that deck does well, does that make the tier list?
So here's the issue.
You got Jacob and Kale. You have 2 amazing players.
Jacob has absolutely piloted Bravo to huge wins too. Yeah. I think the issue that we run into is, to Jason's point, is if we're purely talking about classic constructed and this is less a results based and more a theoretical. Blitz, we have a lot of results based things that we can talk about, but when it comes to constructed, we're talking about theories. What we theorize is the best decks and the most powerful decks. When it comes down to it, the only classic constructed event we have final results for, because the charity event is still ongoing, is an event where Katsu won with like a 32 defense reaction deck. So I don't know that makes me go, Katsu's clearly number 1. I think the most represented deck was Chain. If you look at the top, Chain was 8. Far and away, he was 5 of the top 8.
5 top 8, yep.
And then it was Prism and Dorinthia, because I think that in a field of Chain, again, if we're talking purely on an events theory thing, I assume that Chain is going to show up and be one of the most prevalent decks in the field. People seem to love it. It's the deck that people seem to talk about the most, and it's the deck that seems to be played the most because what it does is inherently powerful. So if I'm saying I recommend X deck because it's kind of a counter, I think Prism and Dorinthia are absolute powerhouses And I think that you have to consider Bravo if
So
that's
all
the
of this,
field.
so I know that I'm causing a lot of this, like asking what we mean by like the tier and stuff like that.
Yep.
And maybe that is just a reason why we should have planned and done a video separate. But I also like the rant. I also like throwing us into the fire. That's fine. But I think probably Prism is my number 2, just because I think that there's a lot to figure out with her still, and I think that she's going to perform really well, and she plays well into Chain.
If Chain is number 1 and it's the most represented deck, I think the decks that you have to consider being really
Next 2 or
powerful.
3, next 1 or 2
The next out of those final 3 spots, I think the decks you have to talk about and consider are Rhinar, Dorinthia, Prism, and Bravo. Because I think those are all decks that have the ability to do things that really give Chain a problem. Because if you look at Bravo, for example, Bravo has one really hard out that can potentially just completely kill Chain. If Chain doesn't have a defense reaction arsenal, and he's already used his Husk, and they dominate Spinal Crush and potentially pummel it, when Chain has like 6 Soul Shackles and he can't have go again, that's game over. Like you just took probably 6 to 8 damage off the Spinal Crush, and you can't get go again. So now your blood debt is probably going to have 4 cards in it. So you're going to take 4 damage on your own turn and then go back to Bravo with the full grip. Like, I think that's just, and that you just automatically like lose the game if he can dominate a pummeled Spinal Crush. I think you just lose the game unless you're 20 health ahead. I think you lose at that point to a good Bravo player, because I don't think you can come back, because he's going to continue to throw big
20
ones.
ahead. Chain,
He never will be
down until the end.
Yep.
He'll get low to 20 teens, and then he comes roaring back.
Yep. I think that's why Rhinar is good into the deck, because Rhinar has the ability to throw these just massive turns where they just rip your whole hand and push 20 through. And now Chain is so far behind, he absolutely cannot afford to have another turn where he isn't going 3 or 4 wide, which puts you in a really risky predicament where now you're like, oh, maybe I'll Soul Shackle. Like, oh God, I'm at 5. If they intimidate my whole hand, I could just die because I can't block, and I've used my Husk, and my Husk is in my banish, and so they inherently do, like the same with Dorinthia. Dorinthia puts on consistent pressure from turn 1 against Chain while Chain is trying to build shackles. He's trying to get his game plan going, and Dorinthia just goes, F that noise. Like, I'm coming hard and I'm coming fast. Like, that's how I beat Chain whenever I beat Chain, is turn 1, like the second I have an opportunity, I'm going to just come straight for your throat. I'm not going to give you, I'm never going to let up. I'm from the second we start this game, I'm going to try and kill you hard and fast. I
played Chain into Harry's Dorinthia, Harry, our Australian buddy. He way ahead. I'm like, this sucks. We get down, and I just put this huge, massive turn together, survive his next onslaught, and come back. And he's like, oh boy, I might be dead. And he ended up mustering it out. It was at like 1-1, but it's a fun matchup because it is.
Yep.
It's swingy. Like, as a Chain player, if you're down by 10-15, you can't worry about it. You're like, okay, this is where I should be, because I need to come back on the next 2 turns. So Dorinthia will be there. I mean, Katsu, do you think he can consistently make it there? Is there enough players to consistently? I don't play him. You do, Dane. I don't know what you feel about Katsu.
I mean, I think Katsu, it makes me a little sad to admit, because it's not my play style at all, but I think Katsu, like Turtle Katsu, is the way to play Katsu if you're going to play him. And all of the top results that have been Katsu in the last year and a half have been like super defensive Katsus. And I think that he does that really well, because he can just, if he's going to defend out and just ping attack, defend out, ping attack, like you're probably going to lose that attrition game into Katsu.
Yeah.
But I mean, that, and it also, I think, just catches people off guard too. I think that a lot of people weren't expecting the Katsu to play the way it did, looking at that deck list, which is fair.
It was like 18 or 19. I counted 18 or 19.
Defense
reactions. That's an insane amount.
Yeah.
Almost a quarter of the deck.
Yeah,
quarter of the playable cards. It's insane.
Yeah. So I think
I would agree on like a Dory for number 2, just because I think that if you go with Dorinthia with the right build, you're just going to win some matchups.
Prism's going to
just
figure
are.
it out.
But here's the issue is I think Prism has more bad matchups than Dory has. Because I think Prism has to be concerned.
So in my head, Dory plays well into 85-90% of the field, right? Has 10% where it's closer to like a 50-50. Prism, I think her into the field percentage is higher. Like it's like whereas Dory's playing well into the field, she's got like 70-30s. I think Prism has matchups where she just does really well into like 60-70% of the field, and then not so well into 20%, and then like a pretty hard loss / 20-80s into like 5-10%. Whereas like she's really gonna struggle into Rhinar, and she's really gonna and that might just be because I lost to Lee's Rhinar pretty hard. But like honestly, like Rhinar that runs like the scab skins, and they can handle popping your attacks or popping your auras, and even in like a aura heavy like go wide, it's still like Rhinar just has so many big attacks that it can block with and still reapply pressure that it's really hard to get ahead on that. But I mean, into a lot of stuff, like getting an attacker like 1 to 3 attacks popped per game because they don't run that many 6 attacks that align with when you're trying to hit them. It's like that's not bad. I mean, a deck that runs 6 attacks is not a hard counter to Prism. Like that's not what that means. And your counterplay to Prism is not just adding 6 attacks into your deck. Because that doesn't. So I don't think that Prism is as bad as I've heard people talk about.
No, I don't think so either. I think that Prism has good play, and I think you can overpilot it into those matchups, because if you can budget your turns correctly and just have one turn where you get yourself in a scenario where they're willing to give up 2 cards to pop 2 Phantasm attacks and you can pay for the footsteps, then you put them in a really weird and precarious position where they're basically giving up their turn to pop your 2 attacks. So they're only blocking with 2 cards, but then they're probably like swinging a club or claws and then arsenaling their last card. And they're really not reapplying pressure, and you're putting them in a position where you're kind of playing that back and forth, and eventually you're going to get a pummeled Erudition through or something and have just a huge turn. But I think that that's where, if they have the counterplay where if they tear limb from limb, you're in a weird spot as Prism where you're kind of in the same spot that Ninja gets into with those like big, huge attacks where they're going to take 15 or 17 to the face. You really don't have much sitting next to you to protect you if they take your whole hand. Whereas someone like Bravo or Dorinthia, that's why I think those matchups are better for them, is because they just go, cool, I've got the fridge, let's just slide it in front and I'll eat half this damage even though you took my whole hand. So they have to do that 2 or 3 times to really start to push those big attacks through. And that's assuming they're not losing their hand to the big attacks coming the other way.
I had a turn with Prism that gave me like, it helped me, I think, see where I'm going to take my Prism list that I think has a pretty solid play into a lot of the field. And there was just a turn where I had Arsenaled Rouse the Ancients and like set up, it was into Bergie, and I'd set up my early pitch of the Cataclysm. And as soon as I saw that Rouse come back around, I just arsenaled it, knowing that I was probably going to be seeing one of my 2 remaining Cataclysms, and drew into a Cataclysm and something else. I literally just went Rouse, 7 with Go Again, Cataclysm, 7 with Go Again, into a Erudition. So like the first 14 damage, you're not getting out of with the 6 power. You're taking it, so it's like, I think that Prism can hit really hard consistently. It just, she needs to be able to be piloted early game to like set that up. And I think that's I'm getting to the point where learning what to set up in Prism and playing it less fast and loose hand to hand like we were when we first started playing on the set. I think that is what is getting me excited about Prism's potential. So we'll see, but I think it's going to prove very good.
So do we think it just goes chain, Dory, Prism in some order?
I'd be fine Dory second. I'd be fine with Dory at second. Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Dory, Prism. So then what's the wild card?
It's either, I mean, I'm going to put Bravo, you're putting Rhinar.
I'll put Rhinar there because I know, and it very well might have been CC. I'll be honest, I haven't been talking to a lot of people about Blitz, so it was probably CC they were talking about Rhinar. But yeah, I think Rhinar, just seeing these Rhinar, like I know he's like a Rhinar truist, purist, whatever you want to call him. Like he loves that
he's
hero.
He's a Rhinar truther.
Yeah. But like, yeah, that deck does really well. He did stuff consistently. Like he was consistent pressure with just a random 26 damage turn. It's like, move.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I'm just going Bravo for my 4th spot, and I'm happy with that there. And we want to know what everybody else thinks too.
I think the super wild card, and there's some truth to this, is the more I play it, the more I think that Boltyn is going to catch some people off guard.
Boltyn, yeah.
Because that deck is scary as hell when it has like when it gets like the huge take flight into Lumina. And now I've been convinced, Joe, if you're listening, I've been convinced that like Dusk Path and Twinning probably just go into the deck, because the potential of having multiple turns where Rain's just a double swing because of Dusk Path ability. And then Twinning Blade, I'm just thinking about a Lumina turn.
That doesn't cost anything. Those are all free.
Yeah. Imagine a situation where you can Tunic a take flight into a charge, playing Lumina Ascension, and then have Twinning Blade in hand, and you just go Lumina Ascension, swing Raiden, Twinning Blade, swing Raiden, and then in your arsenal you have, like a Cataclysm for the rest of your soul, and you just throw a 7 on the end of that. Just toss it out there. Like the deck has potential for these like big explosive, like Rhinar-esque 26 turns where it can just completely rip the game away from people. It has taken a huge learning curve to get the deck into that position, because I think, to Dane's point, and Jason would probably say this about Chain with how much he's played, is I think these new decks require a tremendous amount of energy to figure out how to pilot them early, mid, and late game, versus either setting up for a big late game thing or having kind of a consistent strategy that they play.
I was thinking about this too. Just think about how much effort went into, quote unquote, solving the decks, like after Arcane dropped. Like there was just so, like decks were all over the place for months before people started to really solidify, like, oh, like these are the Dory cards. These are, what you run when you're running Dash. Like, I mean, someone is doing that work somewhere, and I think, in my mind at least, like I'm doing it because I want like the practice of doing it, but I very much accept the fact that like when decks come out of like the top 8s in New Zealand or whatever, like I'm going to look at those decks and be like, okay, how are they running it? What did well? Like I'll make my own tweaks to make them bad so I can learn my lessons myself, and then remake them into what they were originally posted as and be like, yep, this is better. Like I'm going to go through that process, but it's fun just to like practice the deck building process and be like, okay, I'm just reading through cards. Like Zealous Belting seems like it solves an issue in Prism. Like Rouse the Ancient seems like it solves an issue in Prism that doesn't like hinder what it wants to do. So like I'm going to play those, and like going through that and like testing that is just fun, even though people are probably miles ahead of me and lists will get posted that'll totally change my perspective on it. I'm thinking that I need to run more, because playing into you guys is just aggro all the damn time. I'm like, okay, what defense reactions does Prism want? Like that function well, that like let me opt when you know what I mean? So, all right, handy cam. Hey, that sounds like, never mind. Oh my God. Funny thing, Chelsea sent me You know how people always come up with solutions for things that don't necessarily need solutions?
Mm-hmm.
So this is for people in the Midwest when you're trying to butter your corn. There's all kinds of like cool little things that come up in our tricks and stuff. So this is you put the butter in the hand.
That seems good.
Yeah,
good.
It's good. Oh yeah,
I feel like yeah.
My favorite part is that the dude
The issue is
that
once
made it is he's just got a mustache, just like it just
He does.
total creepy.
Of course he does.
it's once you eat that, like once you get done buttering that, it's gonna be hard to put that corn in your mouth.
Oh, that's why you
Or
gotta
is
stretch
it?
out. That's why you gotta stretch out. You gotta stretch the
Yeah.
jaw.
Yeah. You don't eat corn like that, like a typical corn on the cob where you eat it around. You just stick it in your mouth, bite, and like have to
Pull it out with your lots of teeth. All right. Anyways,
Lots of teeth. Okay.
So to kind of wrap stuff up, we had our jank, not our jank, but our tier list there that hopefully we'll get more data to do a proper constructed one of these days.
yeah, maybe
More
we'll even
tournaments.
plan one out sometime.
No,
Yeah.
no, we don't plan stuff.
Someday we'll use
That's for
graphics.
fools. That's for fools.
I was excited to put graphics
I will
together.
say Tuesday, this was Chris's idea. Chris has played on the live stream, but me and him did it just playing Ashes, where we roll some dice and grab some random decks from FavDB and just see what else people are brewing out there, just random decks. And
I like that.
I think that'd be kind of fun. And then other than that,
it's gonna be
I'm
fun
gonna
until
try
somebody
to not suck at Sealed this weekend.
I'm gonna try.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else, guys?
I got nothing.
Cool.
I got nothing.
All right. Well, everybody, thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the tier list. Let us know your comments down below what you think if we got any of that wrong.
Or if we got any of it right.
Yeah, or if you,
Yeah,
or God forbid, God forbid you agree with us. You can also just agree with us. But no, we appreciate everyone joining us. Appreciate all the participation in the comments. Look forward to you guys joining us on Tuesday for our live streams, because that's always fun and it's growing and lots of good back and forth in the comment section there. And look forward to talking to y'all next time. Be sure to like and subscribe. Peace.